There are a total of 28 restoration spells in Morrowind, and you should see them on the screen right now. 6 of these shall be excluded from the ranking. But why? Well, Remove Curse, Cure Corprus Disease, and Restore Skill are not available in the game. Fortify Maximum Magicka exists as a racial or birth bonus, and is also included on one artifact but doesn't exist in spell form. Resist Normal Weapons is a passive vampire bonus and also included on 2 artifacts. And Restore Magicka exists only in consumable form for obvious reasons. What remains are 22 spells, which I shall rank from worst to best, according to my opinion. I'll take into account how useful they are, how often you use the spell, how expensive it is in terms of magicka cost, and any possible alternatives or drawbacks. And with that, let's begin. At the bottom spot is Resist Corprus Disease. I'm sure lore-wise, a Vvardenfell inhabitant would be extremely grateful for this spell's existence, and I sort of like that it does exist for that reason. Gameplay-wise, this spell is useless. There are exactly 2 times when you can get Corprus in this game. Once is during the main quest, where you will get it no matter how much resistance you build up, because it's a scripted event. The other time you can get it is from an old religious woman in Vivec Arena. You'd have to go out of your way to be a murder hobo or complete a temple quest in the most violent possible way. She doesn't deserve to die, she's a random civilian, not a health insurance CEO. There's no loot to be had, hell, she's not even rude. Her worst crime is worshipping Vivec instead of gamer girl Azura. If you kill her, you probably deserve the Corprus, and you should accept your fate. Number 21 is Cure Paralyzation. Getting paralyzed is one of the most annoying things that can happen, but this spell won't help much. Because you can't cast spells when paralyzed. This spell is only useful if you can use it on a paralyzed NPC, and there is exactly 1 Morrowind quest that requires the use of this spell. But it could also be useful if you actually play with a companion. I don't know who does that. Do you actually play with a companion? Let me know in the comments. However, you can drink potions while paralyzed. Somehow. So this effect can be useful in potion form, just not as a spell. Number 20 is Resist Common Disease. Resist your mum. In real life, prevention is better than cure, especially if you live in the United States. But Morrowind doesn't work the same way. The only way to get a common disease is from diseased animals. Also, a disease won't kill you, it'll just be annoying. I've put this so low because curing it afterwards is just objectively better. Number 19 is Resist Blight Disease. This is slightly higher, because Blight diseases are in general more dangerous and the cure is a bit harder to get, but still I would prefer the cure. You should also know that unless you have a 100% resistance, you can still catch the disease. You don't partially block it like with resist elemental spells, it just makes you more unlikely to get it. It all depends if RNGesus loves you or not. Number 18 is Fortify Fatigue. Fatigue is quite an important stat in Morrowind, but what's important is what percentage you have, not the actual number of total fatigue. Furthermore, if you cast it and then the effect ends, you can end up with negative fatigue. So, you may end up laying helplessly on the ground for some time, until your character recovers. Personally, I don't see why I would ever cast this spell if I have Restore Fatigue available, but I could see myself using it if I didn't have it available. Even if I did find some actual niche use for it, I would still prefer potions and enchantments. Number 17 is Fortify Health. Having more health should allow you to tank more damage, but Fortify Health suffers from the same problem as Fortify Fatigue. When the effect runs out, you may suddenly find yourself at 0 health, with obvious consequences. It sucks to be immortal. I see it as more useful as a constant effect enchantment, or at least as a potion, but even then I would probably prefer resistances instead. Number 16 is Fortify Magicka. I've put this spell slightly higher because unlike the previous two spells, you don't end up helpless or dead when the effect runs out. From what I've seen in game, Fortify Magicka is cost effective at very low durations, but as you reach 20 seconds you are giving more Magicka than you are getting. If you want to cast a specific spell that even 100% of your Magicka is not enough for, you can temporarily raise that maximum with this spell, but you will probably also need some restore Magicka too. However, if you're doing that, it'll be simpler and more efficient to just buy some Fortify Magicka potions. I'm starting to see a trend here. Number 15 is Resist Paralysis. We have established on number 21 that Paralyze is annoying to get hit with, and this entry allows you to resist it, so why am I not putting this higher? Well, for one thing, Cure Paralyzation exists as a potion. For another, enemies using Paralyze are rare enough that you'll probably forget about the danger until you find yourself suddenly and mysteriously unable to move. But I also don't think that casting it ahead of every encounter is actually worth it, and once you have enough willpower, you will naturally resist Paralysis anyway. My advice? Carry a few potions of Cure Paralyze on your character and have some ranged attack options to deal with such enemies. Oh, and save regularly. But you should be doing that anyway, especially if playing vanilla. Number 14 is Resist Fire. Resist element spells are different than resist paralysis and resist disease in at least one way. You can partially block damage. With diseases and paralysis you either resist it or you don't. With resist fire, a 10% resistance will shave 10 damage off a 100 magnitude fire damage spell and potentially save your worthless hide. This spell is the lowest among resistance spells because I find fire spells to usually not be that dangerous, comparatively speaking, and fire resistance artifacts are the most common. Fire resistance will not help you against real life damage, such as when I tell you that you are not the handsomest boy, far from it. Grandma lied to you. I know this to be true because I am the handsomest boy. Face facts! Now that I have broken your self-esteem yet again, let's go to number 13, which is Resist Frost. Have you tried dodging? If you did, you would not need resist spells. I'm putting this higher than Resist Fire because Resist Frost artifacts are rarer, but also because frost spells tend to be, in my experience at least, less troublesome than Shock and Poison. When I wrote this, my cat glitched out and sneezed 51 times in a row, but fortunately she rebooted afterwards. Please make note of this important geopolitical event. At number 12 I have placed Resist Magicka. Resist Magicka doesn't protect you against fire, frost, shock, poison or paralysis, so it may feel a bit pointless. There is an obvious insult here and I'm trying really hard not to say it. Anyway, it does protect you against damage health, drain, damage attribute, blind, etc. Mostly a whole bunch of annoying things, which is why I'm putting it higher than resist fire and frost. Especially damage strength. It is also very helpful when you want to wear the boots of blinding speed. Number 11 is resist shock. There are not that many resist shock artifacts and I remember dying from it a bunch of times, so it's a bit higher up than the others. Too bad that resist shock didn't help you when I exposed your grandma's lies. Number 10 is resist poison. It's true that there's a cure poison spell, but then again you can use this spell magic for every element. I am putting this higher than other elements because poison spells are often the most dangerous. Long-lasting poison traps are fairly common, and there are very few artifacts that offer this effect. Poison is also by far the most expensive element, so you are wasting the most enemy magicka with this. But as I conclude this section, I will say this. I prefer resistances either as constant effect enchantments or in potion form. I don't rate them very highly as spells, and only use them occasionally, which is why, in my objectively correct opinion, they don't deserve to be higher on this list. At number 9 I have placed Cure Common Disease. Common diseases are not that dangerous, so it's usually fine to just wait until you are in town to use a shrine. But if you use Restoration, you can skip the middleman and just heal it yourself. This is one simple trick that insurance company CEOs hate. And number 8 is Cure Blight Disease. I'm a bit torn on this one. On one hand, blight diseases are more dangerous, especially this one, which I shall henceforth rename into the Greater Bone Walker Disease. On the other hand, the default magicka cost of a Cure Blight Disease spell is truly outrageous, unless you find one of the discounted versions. It's useful to have Cure Disease potions and spells on hand, both for yourself and because quests that require you to cure NPCs and Quama Queens are fairly common. However, the opportunities to use them will still be somewhat limited, and you could always just carry a bunch of potions and forget about it otherwise. Number 7 is Cure Poison. Poison spells are fairly dangerous, usually due to their long duration, so it's helpful to be able to cancel them midway. But there's the spell, you could use Restore Health to counteract the damage as well, and at high levels you could just tank the poison. So there are other ways to deal with poison, which is why this spell isn't higher. But I have put it higher than Cure Disease spells because poison can kill you and diseases can't. In Morrowind, I mean. I would assume that you are smart enough to know that this doesn't apply to real life, but I have seen posts about people attacking actors for what their onstage characters did. Number 6 is Restore Attribute. Have you ever encountered the most horrible creature of all, the Greater Bone Walker? Did you ever have to drop half your shit due to your encounter with this foul creature? Look no further, because I have a solution for you. This character has encountered a Greater Bone Walker, but just one cast of Restore Strength and he's all shiny and glistening again, like new. Jokes aside, while Restore Attribute doesn't come up too often, you'll definitely want it for cases like this. At the very least, you should have some Restore Strength so you can get your stupid ass to a shrine. You stupid human. Number 5 is Fortify Attribute. Temporarily buff one or more attributes in order to become stronger. Increasing strength makes you hit harder, increasing agility makes you hit more reliably, fortifying willpower makes spells easier to cast, and so forth. Admittedly, this effect is more useful as an enchantment or potion than a spell. But as I'm sure that the deer currently making noise in the background would also tell you, this goes for most of the previous entries as well, and most of those are also only situationally useful. Whereas, Fortify Attribute is something you can cast before every battle, with relative assurance that you aren't wasting mana. Number 4 is Fortify Attack. 1 point of Fortify Attack is the equivalent of putting 1 point in every weapon skill. If I were to cast Fortify Attack with a magnitude of 40 points, I would be able to reliably use any weapon, even those with weapon skill at 5. However, it does nothing for magic skills or hand-to-hand combat, and you have to complete essentially an entire guild questline to get this effect, so it's not easy to acquire. Unlike your mum. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. But as Fortify Attack is very useful and may render weapon skills obsolete, this difficulty in acquiring it is likely by design. Number 3 is Fortify Skill. You can only get this spell effect from NPCs added in either expansion, but it is highly useful. Fortifying a skill has a 5 times greater effect than fortifying an attribute, so you get a much bigger buff by casting this. Admittedly, I was tempted to put it lower than Fortify Attack. However, while Fortify Attack affects all weapon skills at once, it does exactly nothing for magic skills and any other skills that don't involve weapons. Fortify Attack affects more things at the same time, but Fortify Skill is much more versatile. At number 2 I have placed Restore Fatigue. Being tired makes you significantly worse at everything you do in Morrowind. Not that you weren't already bad enough. It most visibly affects combat, but it also makes magic fail more often and even makes you worse at stuff like trading and alchemy. It is for that reason that some form of Restore Fatigue is essential to have. Admittedly, you will cast this spell when your fatigue bar is at least partially empty, but if your restoration skill is high enough, this isn't a problem, since Restore Fatigue is fairly cheap in terms of Magicka cost. And finally, the gold medal, the number 1 spot goes to Restore Health. I'm sure you are shocked by this. Resistances, cures and fortify spells all serve to reduce and remove negative things done to your characters. And this is all well and good, but ultimately, as long as your character lives, the game continues. And Restore Health allows you to directly increase your HP. If Elder Scrolls 6 ever comes out, Bethesda will probably not remove this one, even if all the others get the chopping block. Thanks, Todd. However, Restore Health will not heal any emotional damage received from this video. Such as if I told you that you are the reason why we have all these really tiny measuring units. Okay, this was all the restoration spells that are actually in the game, but there are still 6 more that I have yet to place that are mostly only available in the game files. Starting at the bottom, I'd put Remove Curse at number 28. I don't know how dangerous hypothetical Morrowind curses would be, but no curses exist in the game right now, so the spell would be completely useless. I've placed Cure Corprus Disease at number 27. Lore-wise, it would be a godsend, but gameplay-wise you can only get Corprus at 2 points in the game, and at one of those points you are supposed to get it. So, curing that with a spell could potentially break the main quest, which is why I put it lower than Resist Corprus Disease, which at minimum can't do any damage. Restore Skill is at 24. You would have to go out of your way to damage your skills. As far as I know, the only way to do that is to first fortify a skill and then also drain that skill. But if this does actually happen in-game, you can use the Restore Attributes option on shrines to get your skills back to normal. The last official patch makes sure that this option also includes restoring your skills, so don't worry about this. Fortify Maximum Magicka is at 18, just ahead of Fortify Magicka, because I am assuming it'd have a more substantial effect. But I have no idea how expensive it would be to cast, so it's only hypothetical, and it could be really anywhere on the list. Resist Normal Weapons is at number 16. Normal weapons doesn't include hand-to-hand, silver weapons or anything better than silver weapons, so the majority of weapon materials are actually excluded. But a fair number of NPCs do carry iron, steel, chitin, etc., so it'd be far from useless and deserves 16 at least. And finally, Restore Magicka. Even if it wasn't an exploit, even as a useless spell, it would open up Restore Magicka as an effect to be used in enchanting. Maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, but even just that would earn it a number 3 in my view. If you have reached this part of the video, I most heartily thank you for your attention. Also, you are now pregnant. Congratulations. I think restoration ranking was a bit boring and predictable. If you want something more interesting, watch my mysticism ranking video. Or this other video that YouTube thinks you will like. Thanks for watching. And thanks to your mom as well.